Hello and welcome to our presentation on critical pedagogy and equality in educational technology. We are going to be talking about definitions and the background of both the digital divides and critical pedagogy. We're also going to be discussing the intersections where critical pedagogy and the digital divide overlap and their applications to education. Of course, we're leaving room for responses for group discussion and new learning. Our first subject is the digital divide. The term the digital divide was actually coined in the 1990s, and it referred to a lack of internet access and devices to access that internet. Today, approximately only 1% of households with children don't have access to the internet. However, this is more prevalent in lower income households, where slightly over 4% don't have access. Unfortunately, lower income families also tend to rely on mobile devices like smartphones or tablets instead of personal computers. This is relevant because these devices make it more difficult to do schoolwork or be creative on a digital device. So almost a quarter of lower income households do not have this type of access. This is the second digital divide. The new digital divide isn't really about the haves and the have-nots anymore, but having the knowledge to use the internet appropriately and creatively and at a higher level. According to Hoffman, this digital divide needs comprehensive training to help those who do not have the skills and confidence to use technology to its full potential. Since technology continues to grow and expand, the longer this disconnect continues, the greater the divide becomes. In order for our students to fully benefit from online learning, they have to have the skills and confidence to do so, or access to a parent or another adult that can facilitate that learning. We really saw the results of that during the COVID crisis. Many of our students, I know myself and my coworkers, didn't have all the children participating in the online learning opportunities. I love this quote from Braverman. Teachers are often left struggling to reach students who lack the basic foundations needed to develop digital literacy skills. That is the ability not only to use the devices, but also to fully experience online opportunities and engage in interactions that foster critical thinking about their content and the world around them. Now we're going to talk about overcoming the digital divide and what we need to do so. These are just some of the ideas. We really need a national strategy that incorporates digital literacy and computer science courses to stop the wide variations between provinces. Each province is responsible for its own learning outcomes, and within BC, each school district is responsible to see how those learning outcomes will be delivered. There's great strength in the fact that school districts have that power, and they can cater to the students in their district, which is of great benefit. However, it does create great division between school districts, and some school districts have more emphasis on digital literacy and have very positive effects. Other districts have other priorities. Another thing we really need to look at is an equal division of digital resources in schools. Each school has its own budget and sets its own priorities, which is important. However, sometimes computer devices are lacking. In our own school, where I work, we have one iPad cart, and that cart doesn't even have enough iPads for the larger classes. We simply don't have enough. Professional training for all teachers. This is really important. In one survey, they said 4 out of 5 teachers do not feel confident teaching digital literacy. We just are not putting enough emphasis on this. Another suggestion is funding for out-of-school programs, which might include increasing digital access in libraries and community centers, having programs that allow students to have more access to digital tools and learning. Many students rely on libraries or community centers when they don't have access in their own houses. We need to make sure that's in place, and sometimes it's very piecemeal. Students need to engage in digital learning, literacy work in classrooms that encourage them to be producers and distributors of digital technologies, sharing their values, ideas, or taking social action. They need to be creative within digital literacy, not just working on a platform. This is so important for their future. And our next subject is critical pedagogy. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lorenz Dolmischuk, and I'm going to talk about critical pedagogy and then how critical pedagogy and the digital divide work together in education. Critical pedagogy was first imagined by Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator, and its attempt is to liberate and free people from oppression, taking back control over their own destiny. The goal is to learn to perceive social, political, and economic contradictions and to take action against the oppressive elements of reality. Critical pedagogy is a way of approaching teaching and learning through a lens of compassion and action in an attempt to give equal educational opportunities to everyone. As the classroom continues online, everyone will need easy access to the same tools and resources, or the digital divide grows wider. A variety of micro and macro level circumstances can change the success a student has both inside a physical classroom as well as an online learning environment. In Freire's ideal educational model, students and teachers act in conjunction with one another through a problem-posing model that makes the teachers teacher-students and the students student-teachers. Educators learn from their students and vice versa as they engage together in dialogue and become dually accountable for growth. Education then becomes an act of freedom-making, and relational understanding occurs. Freire, as an educator, sees education as a means towards reconciliation and towards demystifying the myths that chain the oppressed and the oppressors to a reality of lack, power, and decay. Some of the main features, we have briefly touched on the role of students and teachers, but students are to become critical co-investigators, fully responsible for their own consciência de causa, and recognize themselves as subjects in history rather than objects to which history occurs. The use of praxis advances this revolutionary education as curriculum is driven by the needs of the students of society, as dialogue moves past the depositing of one ideas and ideals towards dialogue as an act of creation and revolution as an act of love. Education is suffering from a narration sickness, said Freire. The current methodology of education, according to him, seeks to maintain status quos, providing complacency in populations by removing the ability to think critically about the myths of society. Please keep in mind that the critical pedagogy was first formed in the favelas, the slums of Brazil, and I will let you take from it what you will and leave the rest. But Freire uses the analogy of a banking model to explain the educational process as he sees it. In this model, the teachers act as bankers, making deposits of information to students, and the students then are expected to regurgitate this. The system mirrors the oppressive societal norms in that the teacher is set up as the oppressor who holds the knowledge and power and divvies it out according to his or her own whims to the students. Students hold no ownership of their education and are instead expected to meekly exist and adapt to the caprice of the teacher. So on its front, the digital divide that Monica was explaining and critical pedagogy may not seem to be very true bedfellows, but there's quite a lot of overlap. And the overlap is less in the theory. Critical pedagogy, as we just went over, can be quite jarring to a liberal democracy like in Canada. So really the meat is the use and intent, how they support each other. Technology can be used to promote socially conscious and critical dialogue, and then this dialogue can influence the ways in which we use technology for education. To this end, these two concepts can support one another in the attempts to reconcile the importance of an education to the accessibility of said education. Focusing on how our work as educational technologists can support and increase equity and justice at the intersections of culture, learning, and technology opens unlimited opportunities to engage new or continuing work with hope, optimism, and ethical purpose. A quote from Bradshaw, 2017, from page 25. Therefore, the digital divide is no longer just about access, but how to use the technology efficiently and effectively. The new digital divide, remember, refers to the digital inequalities and inequities that can move beyond the internet access, such as information or digital literacy, which includes how to search through media, have a network literacy, technical and cognitive skills, in order to navigate online, finding what's true, what's supported, and weeding out false news, in addition to being able to use technology for production rather than simply entertainment. College and Height in 2016 state that building digital infrastructure and broadening access to the internet without teaching digital literacy is imprudent and will lead to increased inequality. So what does this mean for us? Well, critical pedagogy, as Freire first imagined it, attempts to liberate and free people from oppression, taking back control over their destiny. Again, the goal, learning to perceive social, political, economic contradictions and take action against the oppressive elements of our reality. The interplay between this and the need for greater equity in the access to technology has been no more apparent than in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, and we will talk on this in Jesse's section coming up. Educational technology seeks to inform and afford access to learners, although the political nature of education cannot be overlooked. Many differences separate the pedagogical underpinnings of each and are eloquently outlined in Bradshaw's work 2017, and a link is available in our references. So as just a way to put this together in a visual sense, when we are looking at how critical pedagogy and digital access combine, we have to look at the learners, the teachers, and then how we access the technology, how we use it, and what is the underlying motive behind it, that critical consciousness. So learners have to be active participants in their education, having full access to the needed tech as well as the skills to use it. Teachers, therefore, engage the students in determining their own power in education. The dialogue between the teachers and the learners determine the foci. Accessing technology, students require the necessary tools and software to access learning opportunities. Knowing how to use the technology is just as important as having it at all, which is why digital literacy skills are so important. And finally, students and teachers co-create learning with the impetus to confront inequalities in these systems. So that is it for my section. I'm going to turn it over to Jessie. Thank you so much.
Without sufficient access to resources, human, material, and technological, education can fall short of its potential. Deliberate attention needs to be put towards accessibility and inclusivity in pursuit of equality in all educational endeavors. Critical pedagogy is a way of approaching teaching and learning through a lens of compassion and action in an attempt to create a meaningful dialogue between the teacher and learner, regardless of the topic or the setting. In our current global pandemic, nearly all teaching and learning has been forced to move online instantly. Has this created a further digital divide between the haves and the have-nots? Is it as simple as providing the technology and the access to those who may need it? What is a meaningful educational dialogue, and can it exist online? With a portable and modular approach, online and mobile learning is hopefully diminishing the digital divide we speak of, ideally increasing the possibility for the equity of access to education in rural communities and beyond. There are a few examples of nonprofit websites that have done their best to democratize learning by creating free platforms for teachers and learners to compile resources to help one another. Their goal is clear: to approach online learning as a global, positive, and user-friendly community that bridges the socioeconomic gap. The ideal for education in general is to empower people with knowledge and know-how to achieve their highest potential and achieve self-sufficiency. Factors affecting quality of learning. Those are access to libraries, human and material resources, infrastructure of school and home life, well-paid and informed instructors, available technology, universally designed learning strategies, attendance and interest, self-sufficient learning, holistic teaching approaches, creative problem-solving and playful integration of new educational technologies, accessibility in language. Recommendations for practice in triangle formula. On the bottom, we've got the hardware and software plus internet access, as well as the support for that technology. And that first bottom tier is school infrastructure. In the middle, we have the use of that technology by the teachers and the students, and this involves being in the classroom or in an online environment. At the top, we have the empowerment of the students, which involves the individual student and their own growth. Critical pedagogy offers us a powerful and ethical way to consider our practice as we integrate educational technologies into the classroom and online. The rush to adapt to changing global climate and technology has given us little time to reflect on the effects of a growing digital divide. However, there have been improvements to those that have economic challenges. In April of this year, Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced that the provincial government would be providing computers and devices to those who need it most. The caveat, of course, even if the internet and computers are accessible, the knowledge of how to use it properly is not always present. Therefore, the digital divide is no longer about access, but how to use the technology efficiently and effectively. The new digital divide refers to digital inequalities that move beyond internet access, such as information and digital literacy, which could involve online searching, digital interfacing, social media and networking, understanding security and your responsibility as a global digital citizen. Building infrastructure and broadening access to the internet without teaching digital literacy is imprudent and will lead to increased inequality. The 5 key elements to ensuring an equity of access and minimizing the digital divide are: 1. Affordable, robust broadband internet service. 2. Internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the user. 3. Access to digital literacy training. 4. Quality technical support. And 5. Applications and online content designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. And in review, the digital divide means that simply not all access is equal. A critical pedagogy uses education as a tool to encourage equality. An intersection of those two is using technology to teach freedom, equality, and inclusivity both inside the classroom and online. In order to do so, a lens of social justice must be applied to have a constructive, comprehensive dialogue about inclusivity and equality, in order to mitigate the digital divide that continues to grow larger as a result of the socioeconomic gap.